there. So today we're going to talk about camera angles, and this is also one of the main things that you have to know. Like, this is the most basic things to create amazing food photography. So let's just dive in. Usually the best viewpoint is not the first place you look, but you need to find the best angles because that's your chance to be creative and start experimenting. So for example, when you sit behind the table or stand next to the food, then usually this angle is not the best one. It might be, but it's not always the case. So what you can do here is that get down on your knees, get on your tippy toes and just experiment, because finding the angle is like one of the main things when it's like the basic. So what I would recommend you highly to do is try not to be lazy and start moving around, as I told you before. And sometimes I would like to climb on the table, climb on the chair, or if I don't have the ladder, then just climb on something and find like different viewpoints. And actually, sometimes I think that food photography might be even more dangerous than people might think. It's because in the end of the day, you're like climbing really, really high. But yeah, it depends, because yeah, I'm actually pretty happy that health insurance companies don't take it as a risk. But yeah, obviously this one, like, I would not recommend you guys to try this one at home because it's not the safest option. So if you climb somewhere, then definitely make sure that you're safe there. So another thing I usually like to do, since I usually photograph food with my tripod, is that I place my tripod on one spot and start styling, or the other option is that I move around, and when I find the perfect angle, then I put the tripod there, because tripod in general usually makes you quite limited because it's like massive, it's harder to work with tripod. So that's why I highly, highly recommend you guys to move around, find angle, and then put your tripod there. So basic food photography angles. So one of the most basic one is obviously 45 degrees. And this one I would say is mostly used with macro lens and sometimes 50mm lens as well, but it depends on the whole styling and scene, because with 50mm lens you usually run out of background. Obviously it depends on how big your background is, but in many cases you run out of the background. So I would highly recommend you guys to use the 90mm or 100mm lens for the 45-degree angle. So, and then another thing is that when you're close enough, then the angle is like this, that you don't usually see the horizontal line and you only see the surface. So for example, here, as you can see, you can't see the horizon here or here, because it's like 45 degrees and you're not seeing the surface whatsoever. However, on the 30-degree angle, you will see it. So this one is slightly lower than the 45 degrees, but it's not like 90 degrees. So you can see the horizon line in the background, and you can definitely show the texture of the meal. And here I would highly recommend you guys to use 90mm or 50mm lens, like both work. And as you can see here, 30-degree angle, it's not like 90 degrees, so you're not completely down, but it's like a little bit up there, and you can see the horizon line here and here. And so the third angle, which is also like the main angle, is the overhead shot. So sometimes I feel like this is one of the most popular things in Instagram. Like, you can see it all over the place, and sometimes you might even overdo it, but especially with phone photography, it's the easiest thing to use. So, but why is it popular is quite often because you have a different viewpoint, obviously, and human eyes don't usually see like this kind of thing. For example, if you have the full table and you're having like overhead shot, like straight on, like overhead and the full table there, because usually you're sitting behind the table. So obviously it's not the common view for your eyes, and you're not used to this one, and you will see a completely different viewpoint, and this one makes it interesting. And for this one, obviously, I recommend 50mm lens or 35mm lens. With 35mm, it's like it depends because sometimes it's might like the 35 is like it might change the plates and everything. So it depends. Like you have to like play around with these ones. But for phone photography as well, like it's like highly recommended overhead shots. And then obviously there are like some foods that look way better overhead, for example, smoothie bowls. And because they usually have like those amazing layers, those amazing styling. So quite often they don't complement when you're shooting from 45 degrees. And then that's why I highly recommend you guys to shoot overhead. And another thing, like as you can see, you can play around with the overheads here. And then the fourth angle is straight on shot, so 90-degree angle. So your camera is somewhere here. And this one is highly recommended when you work with layers. So for example, sandwiches, burgers, pancakes, dessert jars. And here again, like 90mm or 50mm lens is highly recommended. So, but the main thing here is that what you want to do is that you want to flatter the food with the angles. So here, what you can do is that depending on the food, like you see, like what's the best side? It's like basically with portraits as well. Like people are sometimes saying, oh, this side is my better side and this one is my not as good side. With food, you have the model there and it's a similar case. Because in the end of the day, you want to flatter the food with the angle. So you want to bring out the best with your model. And that's why I highly recommend you guys to play around with these ones. So let's have a little recap. So first of all, play around with different angles and adjust the angles when needed. And when you work with tripod, then at first move around, find the angle, and then you put your tripod there. And in the end of the day, you really want to flatter the food. So because with these ones, it's the case that food in general is your model and you want to flatter them. And then secondly, I would highly recommend you guys to just make different shots, because especially when you work with clients, then you want to, from the same dish or same subject, you want to have like different angles, like one overhead shot, one 45 degrees, one 30 degrees. And then like this is usually, yeah, the clients are usually happy when you work like this. Thank you everyone for watching. I hope this was useful and we will see you in the next one. Bye.